I came home to a driveway that felt violated. My restored '69 Camaro was gone, dragged away while I was buying groceries, and across the street, the HOA president stood there with a clipboard and a smile that said she thought she'd finally won. What she didn't know, what nobody in that neighborhood knew yet, was that this little power play was about to trigger something that weighed 25 tons and would end her reign for good. Let me back up, because none of this started with a tank or even with a tow truck. It started with me trying to live a quiet life. My name is Marcus Allen. I'm not flashy. I don't throw parties. I mow my lawn on schedule, pay my dues on time, and wave to my neighbors like a normal human being. I served a little over 20 years in the Army before retiring, and after that, I just wanted peace. That's why I bought a modest house in a place called Oak Ridge Hills, a clean, well-kept suburban neighborhood where the biggest drama was usually whose trash can was too close to the curb. The Camaro was the only thing about me that stood out. It was a 1969 SS Deep Blue restored piece by piece over 3 years. Not because I wanted attention, but because it was something my dad and I had started together before he passed. He used to hunt for parts at swap meets, grease under his fingernails, coffee always going cold on the workbench. Finishing that car felt like finishing a conversation we never got to end. I parked it in my own driveway, never on the street, never blocking anyone, always spotless. And that's what made Linda Harper notice me. Linda was the HOA president. Early 50s, perfect blonde bob, designer workout clothes she never seemed to sweat in, and that clipboard always that clipboard. She didn't walk through the neighborhood, she patrolled it. Grass a little high clipboard. Flag a little too big clipboard. Someone's trash bin rotated half an inch the wrong way, clipboard photo citation. At first I thought she was just bored. The first warning came as a polite little note tucked under my mailbox clip. Vehicle aesthetic non-compliance, it said. No specific rule, no bylaw number, just a vague suggestion that my car did not align with community standards. I laughed, literally laughed. I figured it was a mistake. The second notice came a week later. Same thing, more passive-aggressive. The third came with a fine attached. That's when I walked across the street and talked to her. "Hey, Linda," I said, keeping it friendly. "There's no rule against classic cars in the driveway." I checked. She smiled that tight smile. "It's about maintaining property values, Marcus. This is a family community. It's parked on my property," I said, "and it's legal." She tilted her head, looking me up and down. "We all make sacrifices for the neighborhood." That was the first time something in her tone rubbed me the wrong way. But still, I let it go. I paid the fine even though I didn't agree with it. I told myself it wasn't worth the hassle. I was wrong. The day everything blew up, I was gone less than 2 hours. Grocery store hardware aisle, nothing special. My phone buzzed halfway through checkout. Then again. "Tow truck at your house." Linda's outside with her clipboard. "Dude, your car." I left the cart right there and drove home faster than I should have, heart pounding in that quiet, familiar way I hadn't felt since deployment days. When I turned onto my street, I saw the marks before I saw Linda. Fresh black streaks across my driveway. Scrapes in the concrete. The Camaro was gone. I just sat there in my pickup for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, groceries forgotten, staring at the empty space like I'd been punched in the chest. Across the street, Linda stood with 2 neighbors I barely knew, chatting like this was a block party. When she saw me, she dismissed them and walked over. "Towed at 1:40 p.m., she said before I could even speak. "Violation of HOA standards. Where is my car?" My voice sounded calm, but it wasn't. She shrugged. "Impound lot on Route 9. You can retrieve it after paying the fines." I opened my mouth to argue, and that's when I saw it, my license plate frame. The bronze one with my service insignia sitting in the top of my trash bin, smeared with coffee grounds. "I told you those military displays were inappropriate," she said, following my gaze. "This isn't a base, it's a neighborhood." Something cold slid into my chest. "That car was legally parked," I said. "On my property." She stepped closer. "Your property ends where community standards begin. Military people always think they're special, Marcus. But you don't get exceptions here." There were people watching, curtains twitching, phones half raised. I felt that old instinct to lock it down, stay neutral, don't give the enemy anything. So I nodded once. "Where's the paperwork?" I asked. She smiled again. Already filed. Then she turned around and walked away like she'd just checked off the last item on her list. That night I didn't sleep. I drove to the impound lot, paid a ridiculous fee, and brought the Camaro home under a streetlight that suddenly felt hostile. I cleaned the frame, set it on my workbench, and stared at it until dawn. By morning the fines started multiplying. Grass too high by a quarter inch. Trash bin angle incorrect. Doormat color non-compliant. Outdoor chair placement visually disruptive. Every single one carried a $200 per day fine. I measured everything, photographed everything. I was in compliance every time. And still the notices kept coming. Neighbors stopped making eye contact. A few avoided my side of the street entirely. Linda posted in the community group about ongoing resistance from a problematic resident. People commented with angry emojis, worried about property values. People I'd helped jumpstart cars for. I started to feel small. There was a night about a week in when I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by yellow notices and actually wondered if I was the problem. If maybe I should just sell the house, take the loss, walk away. If peace was worth more than pride. That thought scared me more than Linda ever could, because giving up felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. So I stopped reacting and I started reading. HOA bylaws, enforcement procedures, state property law, federal protections. I treated it like a mission, highlighted sections, took notes, built a timeline. And that's when the cracks showed. Linda hadn't followed procedure on a single citation. No warnings, no hearings, no board votes. The tow, completely unauthorized, the fines invalid without review. Then I dug deeper. Public records showed she'd approved contracts without board consent, paid a landscaping company owned by her brother-in-law, moved money between accounts without authorization. The same rules she wielded like a weapon she was breaking casually. That's when I remembered the garage. Behind that steel door sat something I'd bought years ago through a federal surplus program. Fully decommissioned, fully registered, a historical military vehicle used for memorial events. It weighed 25 tons. I hadn't planned to use it. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten about it. But Linda had made one fatal mistake. She'd assumed her authority was absolute. I scheduled transport. The morning the truck arrived, Oak Ridge Hills woke up to a sound it had never heard before. A low, rolling rumble that set off car alarms and drew people out of their houses in pajamas and bathrobes. Phones came out instantly. Linda lost her mind. She ran into the street, heels sinking into asphalt, screaming about weapons and danger and children. She called the police, the fire department, a tow company that laughed and hung up when she mentioned the weight. The officer who arrived checked the paperwork, then checked it again. "This is legal," he said finally. The look on Linda's face, shock, rage, fear, it was all there at once. When the vehicle was unloaded onto my reinforced driveway, the entire street went silent. 25 tons of steel settled with a deep final thud that felt like punctuation. Linda screamed about HOA authority. The officer shook his head. Federal registration overrides HOA bylaws. That was it. That was the moment. By that evening, the board had called an emergency meeting. Evidence was presented. Financial records reviewed. Linda was suspended pending investigation. She sat there, silent, clipboard useless in her lap, while her world collapsed. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched. When it was over, I walked past her in the parking lot. She wouldn't look at me. "This didn't have to happen," I said quietly. She snapped back. "You did this to spite me." "No," I said. "I did this because you forgot where your power ends." That was the last time she spoke to me as HOA president. Sometimes standing up to a bully isn't about being louder. It's about knowing your ground, holding it, and refusing to move.